My son was fighting for his life in the ICU when my phone lit up with my mother's name. Her voice came sharp and cold. "Tomorrow's your sister's birthday, come help prep." I whispered back, "I can't." "He's barely holding on." She didn't even pause. "Then you're cut off." In that moment between the beeping monitors and my boy's still body, I realized I didn't just lose my mother. I lost whatever illusion I had left of a family. I hung up, blocked her number, and prayed my son would survive the night. The next morning he opened his eyes for the first time since the accident, looked straight at me, and whispered the words that shattered everything I thought I knew, "Dad. Grandma caused it." Before I share my story, I want to know you're here with me. Just say, "listening" in the comments, or let me know where you're watching from. Sometimes even the smallest connection can make a story feel heard. Thank you. And now, here's my story. By the way, if you want to follow this journey all the way to the truth, hit subscribe. My name is Cassian Holt, and this is what happened to me. My name is Cassian Holt, and the morning everything began felt like any other quiet fall day in Flagstaff. The air coming through the cracked kitchen window carried that sharp pine smell you only get up here, and the sunlight brushed across the countertop in long, calm strokes. Our little second-floor apartment wasn't much, but it was ours, just me and my 7-year-old son Ryder, living a life simple enough to feel safe. I was frying eggs, listening to the kettle rumble toward a boil, when Ryder padded into the kitchen with that messy hair of his sticking up in every direction, already talking about constellations and how Jupiter's gravity could eat Earth like cereal. He was skinny quick, and always asking why the sky looked more blue after rain, why he couldn't bike alone to Buffalo Park, why grown-ups forgot things children remembered. He kept a giant trail map taped to his bedroom wall and treated it like sacred scripture. That morning he bounced beside me at the stove, telling me all about the big ride he and his friends planned for later. I teased him about whether he had actually tightened his brakes this time, and he rolled his eyes the way only a 7-year-old who thinks he's basically a professional athlete can. I loved mornings like that, just him. Just me, breakfast simple enough to not feel rushed. I worked as a lens technician in a small camera shop downtown and picked up freelance shoots on weekends. Nothing glamorous, nothing huge, but enough to pay rent insurance and put a few dollars aside whenever I could. And more than anything, it was a life completely separate from the Holt family empire back in Scottsdale. I'd spent most of my life trying to peel off the expectations my mother draped over me like a tailored straitjacket. I moved to Flagstaff so I could breathe. So Ryder could breathe. The quiet broke when my phone buzzed on the counter. Marjorie Holt, my mother. Just seeing her name made something tighten beneath my ribs. I picked up anyway. Her voice, perfectly polished, never changed, cool, crisp, like she was hosting a fundraiser even when she was insulting you. She asked how Ryder was, in the same tone she used to confirm a dinner reservation, then shifted instantly to what she really cared about. "Don't forget Brielle's birthday next week. It's important you show up appropriately this year." I murmured something non-committal because every clear answer led to a fight, and with her fights always ended with her winning. When I hung up, I stared at the wall for a moment, remembering the glass-walled dining room back in Scottsdale, all those perfect tablescapes and forced smiles. I told myself what I always did. You're not that kid anymore. You choose your life now. Ryder zipped past me, grabbing his helmet and water bottle. "Dad, do I look like a pro?" He raised one leg dramatically, like he was mounting an Olympic bike, nearly tripping over his shoelace. I laughed, crouched down to tie it, and checked his brakes and tires one more time. As he stuffed his phone into his pocket, I noticed a missed call on the screen, an unfamiliar number with a Scottsdale area code. I opened my mouth to ask, but his friend's dad honked outside and Ryder bolted for the stairs. "Dad, don't forget to check my trail map. I'm adding a new line today." He shouted it over his shoulder as he vanished down the hallway. The door closed and the hallway fell still. I watched from the window as he climbed into the truck, waving at me with all the energy in the world. Something inside me twitched, quick, subtle, like a string tightening for no reason I could name. A flicker of unease I brushed away because everything looked so normal. But as I stood there, palms flat against the cool glass, An idea drifted across my mind, uninvited, unwelcome. If I had known that was the last morning of our old life, I would have held him longer. I was rinsing a glass in the sink when the phone rang at exactly 11:18. I didn't recognize the number Flagstaff area code, but something in my gut tightened again. When I answered, a woman's voice came through, steady but urgent. "Is this the father of Ryder Holt?" That one word, father, hit harder than it should have. The glass slipped from my hand, clattering into the basin. The woman continued. There had been an accident at Buffalo Park Trail. A pickup truck struck Ryder. He was unconscious. Paramedics were transporting him to Flagstaff Medical Center. I didn't hear everything she said. I only remember 2 words pulsing in my ears: critical condition. I don't remember locking the door. I don't remember grabbing my keys. I only remember my hands shaking on the steering wheel as I sped toward the hospital, the world outside blurring. Images of Ryder flashed through my mind, his grin over breakfast, that untied shoelace, his tiny voice explaining gravity. I whispered, "Please, please, please," each time I turned onto a new street. A siren wailed somewhere nearby, and I followed the sound as if it was the only thread leading me forward. The ER was chaos: stretchers, nurses shouting orders, the sharp bite of antiseptic in the air. I stumbled to the counter, barely able to speak. My son, Ryder Holt, 7. Bike accident. The receptionist nodded quickly, her expression shifting into something both practiced and kind. A coordinator led me into a small room off the side where the walls felt too close. A doctor came in, and his face said everything before his words did. Severe head trauma, internal bleeding, broken ribs, broken leg. He repeated critical, like it was a diagnosis on its own. The next 48 hours are crucial, he said. When they finally let me see him, I didn't recognize my own child. His small body was swallowed by bandages, tubes, and machines that breathed for him. His face, my bright, curious boy, was swollen, bruised, too still. I felt the world tilt. A nurse named Milo stood beside me, explaining each machine and monitor in a calm, grounded voice. He told me I could talk to Ryder even if he couldn't respond. "His brain still needs to know you're here," he said. That sentence became the anchor I clung to. Later, when I stepped out into the hallway to breathe, I overheard Milo and another nurse whispering near the supply cart. A woman called asking about the boy, one said. Wouldn't give her name. Just said she was family. Very insistent. Refused to leave a callback number. Something prickled at the base of my neck. I thought of my mother, of the missed Scottsdale call on Ryder's phone, but I forced myself to push it aside. She was too busy hosting events and planning Brielle's birthday to be circling around my son's hospital room in secret. At least, that's what I told myself. I stayed by Ryder's bedside as the sky outside darkened. My father Douglas called and said he'd get to Flagstaff as soon as he could. Friends offered to check in on the apartment. Nurses encouraged me to rest, but I couldn't leave. If he wakes up and I'm not here, I told Milo, he'll think I abandoned him. Milo didn't argue, he just brought me a blanket and dimmed the lights. I sat in that stiff plastic chair, my hand resting on Ryder's arm, listening to the steady beeping that now dictated the rhythm of my world. Every rise and fall of his chest felt borrowed. Every breath felt fragile. And as the first long night settled in around us, one promise wrapped itself around my heart like a binding. From this moment on, I would live according to the sound of my son's heartbeat, whatever it took. By the second morning in the ICU, exhaustion had settled so deeply into my bones it felt physical, like a second spine made of lead. I caught sight of myself in the bathroom mirror, bloodshot eyes, stubble darkening my jaw, shirt creased from too many hours spent curled in a plastic chair. I splashed cold water on my face, but nothing washed away the heaviness under my skin. When I opened the door, Milo was waiting in the hallway with a paper cup of coffee. It tasted burnt and thin, but it was the first warm thing I'd held since yesterday. The doctor stopped me before I stepped back into Ryder's room. He said the swelling was holding steady, which wasn't bad news, but not good news either. "We're waiting," he said. Waiting, my least favorite verb in the English language. Back in the dim ICU, I sat beside Ryder's bed listening to the steady click and beep of machines. Every sound felt like a reminder of how fragile he was. I lowered my head and whispered, asking questions with no answers. If he didn't wake up, who would I become? If he woke up but couldn't walk or speak or remember me, what kind of father would that make me? I stared at his small, bruised hands and wondered how a life could pivot so violently in a single hour. As the minutes dragged on, my mind drifted back to Scottsdale, to the house where every wall gleamed and every conversation felt like a performance. I could see the long dining table polished to a mirror shine the crystal glasses lined up with military precision. I was a teenager again, sitting stiffly while Brielle recited her award-winning essay, and my mother clapped like she was watching a Broadway show. When it was my turn, I mentioned a photograph I'd taken, something I was proud of, but my mother didn't even let me finish. "Cassian, focus on something practical," she said. "Photography won't take you anywhere." Her voice still echoes in my head, sharp as the silverware she aligned at those dinners. Then came the sentence that shaped the entire trajectory of my life. "You are not allowed to fail." I didn't raise a mediocre son. I spent years trying to outrun that line. Brielle was everything I wasn't. She fit every mold, hit every benchmark, followed every script our mother handed her. Perfect grades, perfect job, perfect family. She never meant to be my rival. She just existed in a house where presence alone was enough to overshadow me. I didn't resent her, not really. I resented the way our mother weaponized her achievements to point out my inadequacies. Eventually, I stopped going home unless I had to. Flagstaff became more than distance, it became survival. A different memory surfaced the day Mother announced she had opened a college fund for Ryder. I had just gone through the divorce, my bank account thinning faster than I could fill it. Her offer felt like a lifeline until she told me the conditions. She controlled the fund. Any major decision about Ryder's schooling or where we lived had to be approved by her. I caved because I was scared. Scared of failing my son before I had even learned how to stand on my own again. Sitting in the ICU, now looking at the numbers in my own nearly empty savings account, I understood how tightly she still held the strings I'd tried to cut. If she pulled her support, Ryder's future would become a much steeper climb. It was late afternoon when I stepped into the hallway after speaking with the doctor again. The sun was low, casting honey-colored light through the windows, softening the sterile walls for a moment. That's when my phone buzzed. Mom. The name alone made my stomach grip. I let it ring once, twice, then answered. She asked about Ryder, but her tone held no depth, no tremor, no fear. Before I could finish explaining, she pivoted. "Tomorrow is Brielle's 30th birthday. The whole family will be there. Important people, Cassian. You can't embarrass us by being absent." I stared at the floor. "I'm not going anywhere. Ryder is in the ICU. He could die." Her reply was ice. "Doctors can handle it. Family comes first. If you don't come, I will reconsider all financial support." I pressed my eyes shut. "You're using this hospital to control me." She exhaled through the phone like I was the unreasonable one. "If you won't honor your family, then you're no longer part of it." And she hung up. For the first time in my life, I didn't beg. My hand shook as I opened my phone, found her name, and pressed block. My body felt hollow, and yet something inside me steadied for the first time in years, like the moment before a diver breaks through the surface of the water. Almost immediately, an email popped up from the bank. A notice, change in management authority, Ryder Holt College Fund. My breath froze. I didn't yet know what it meant, but dread spread through me like cold ink. I walked back down the hallway, back toward the soft glow of Ryder's room, and stood at the glass, watching his chest rise and fall with the help of a machine. I whispered to myself, "This time, I choose him." And for once, there was no hesitation, no guilt, no war inside me. Just a quiet, solid certainty that whatever happened next, I was finally standing on the right side. That night, the third night, I refused to close my eyes. Ryder's room was dim, except for the monitors casting shifting greens and blues across the walls. I sat beside his bed, feeling every muscle in my back protest, but not caring enough to move. Milo came in to check his pupils and murmured, "There's slight improvement. Slight, but enough to hook itself into me like a lifeline." I leaned forward, resting my hand on Ryder's. Sometime after midnight, Ryder's fingers twitched beneath mine. Not a reflex, not a spasm, a deliberate squeeze, faint but undeniable. My breath caught. Milo hurried back when I called his name, and after examining Ryder, he nodded. "He's responding to you." I felt tears gather before I could stop them. For the first time since the accident, hope didn't feel like a betrayal. It felt like oxygen. But then another memory surfaced, one I'd brushed aside when he first mentioned it. 2 weeks ago, Ryder had come home quiet, tugging at the sleeves of his hoodie. When I asked what was wrong, he whispered, "Dad, a woman keeps watching me at school." I dismissed it, thinking it was a teacher, a volunteer, maybe another parent. Now sitting in that room with the beeping machines and my son's hand weakly curled around mine, the words slithered back into my mind and settled there. I felt the skin on my arms tighten. At dawn, my phone buzzed with another call from a Scottsdale area code. I answered, but all I heard was background noise, then the line went dead. The calls kept coming throughout the morning, each one ending the same way. It no longer felt random. It felt like pressure. Eyes on the back of my neck. A presence I couldn't name yet, but could feel circling closer. Around mid-morning, the doctor came in and said they were lowering Ryder's sedation. "We need to see what his brain can do on its own," he explained. I nodded, heart thumping, watching Ryder's eyelids tremble like they were trying to remember how to lift. His breathing steadied each inhale a little stronger than before. Then his lashes fluttered, and for a moment his eyes cracked open, unfocused, glassy but open. His lips moved. I leaned close, so close I could feel the faint warmth of his breath. His voice came out like a scrape. "Dad." "I'm scared." I swallowed, my voice thick. "Of what, buddy?" He blinked slowly, struggling. "The woman." My heartbeat faltered. "What woman?" No answer. His eyes drifted shut again, the effort too much for him. But something had been set in motion, something I couldn't stop now. Later, during a routine check, the doctor asked Ryder a series of simple questions. Ryder barely managed words, but one phrase came out soft and broken. I saw the silver truck. A shiver sliced through me. My mother's GMC Sierra was silver. Very silver. I shook the thought away, too wild, too cruel, but the seed had been planted. And it hurt. When I finally stepped out of the ICU into the hallway, the fluorescent lights above me buzzed faintly. My hands felt cold, colder than they should have been. Hope was warming one side of me while dread chilled the other. As I walked toward the waiting room, I pressed a palm against my chest like I could steady the storm inside. Ryder's words replayed in a loop: the woman, the fear, the silver truck. "I don't know what I'm about to uncover," I whispered to myself, "but whatever it is, it's already changing everything." By the time Ryder whispered about the silver truck, something inside me shifted from fear to a sharp, focused kind of resolve. I couldn't sit in that chair another second. I asked Milo to stay with him, promising I'd be gone no more than half an hour, though every step I took away from the ICU felt like stepping off a cliff. I drove straight to the Flagstaff police station, palms sweating on the wheel, replaying Ryder's voice in my head. I walked in and asked to file an incident report tied to a hit-and-run at Buffalo Park. Officer Lewis met me in the lobby, a calm man with steady eyes, the kind of cop who looked like he'd seen everything twice. When he asked if Ryder had ever mentioned being followed or watched by an adult, I heard myself explaining the strange story Ryder told me about a woman standing near the school fence. Lewis didn't brush it off. He scribbled fast, his jaw tightening the longer I talked. He gestured for me to follow him into the traffic surveillance room, where a large monitor covered an entire wall. He typed in the time window, 10:10 to 10:30 a.m., and pulled up footage from Route 89A, the road leading to Buffalo Park. My heartbeat thudded in my throat as grainy video flickered onto the screen. Cars streamed steadily along the highway. Then at exactly 10:16 a.m., a silver GMC Sierra glided into the turn lane toward the trail. My stomach dropped so hard I had to grab the back of a chair. That was the model my mother drove in Scottsdale. Lewis zoomed in on the rear plate, though the camera's angle didn't give a full read. Still, the first three characters were clear: 9A3. My family's gated community issued plates in the 9A series. I tried to rationalize it. Flagstaff wasn't far, plenty of Arizonans owned silver trucks, but reason didn't stick. A cold pulse began in the center of my chest. Then Lewis asked about the missed Scottsdale calls on my phone. I pulled out the screen showing him the list of repeated numbers that had hung up every time I answered. He punched the digits into his computer. "These pings come from a cell tower a quarter-mile from your mother's address," he said. Something in the room tilted. I braced my hands on the table just to stay upright. A memory slammed into me from years earlier, Ryder, only 5, sitting at my mother's kitchen island eating fruit she'd cut into perfect cubes. I had stepped out of the room for a moment and overheard her tell him in that syrupy tone she reserved for manipulation, "If your father doesn't raise you properly, Grandma will take care of everything." At the time I laughed it off, convincing myself she'd simply overstepped as always. Now it returned like a blade I never saw coming. When I stepped out of the station, I was still trying to breathe normally when my phone rang again. This time it was Brielle. Before I could speak, she was already crying. "Cassian." Mom wasn't home at all that morning. She rushed out. I looked at the security logs. The garage opened just after 5. Her car didn't come back until almost noon. I froze on the sidewalk. Cars rolled past, people moved around me, but I felt suspended in a moment that didn't belong to the world outside. "Do you know where she went?" I asked. "No," Brielle whispered. "But I think she's hiding something." I couldn't talk anymore. I ended the call and ran to my car, my breath breaking, my thoughts splintering into jagged pieces. On the drive back to the hospital, I kept saying the same thing under my breath like a broken record. No, no, no. But the truth was already settling into place, heavy and undeniable. When I stepped back into the hospital lobby, the smell of disinfectant, the hum of fluorescent lights, the weight of the ICU 2 floors above, one realization wrapped around my spine like ice. The truth I was chasing might lead straight to the person who brought me into this world. And for the first time, I didn't know if I could handle the answer. I had barely walked through the ICU doors when I saw her. Marjorie Holt stood in the corridor like she owned the place, wearing a tailored dress and pearls, as if she had stepped out of a charity brunch instead of into a hospital where her grandson hovered between life and death. I felt anger rise like heat up my neck, colliding with an old familiar fear. "What are you doing here?" I asked. She gave me a quick once-over, taking in my wrinkled clothes and unshaven face. "You look terrible, Cassian. This is why I told you to take better care of yourself. Ryder is in critical condition," I said through clenched teeth. She waved a manicured hand. "You're dramatizing it. Children fall. They get hurt. You're making this bigger than it is." I had to curl my fingers into fists to keep my voice from cracking. The cold detachment in her tone was worse than anger. It was dismissal, indifference, a worldview where other people were props. Before I could respond, Milo hurried down the hall. "He's waking up more," he said. "You should come now." I moved to follow him, but my mother swept in behind me. The moment Ryder saw her through the doorway, his body jerked like he'd been shocked. His breathing spiked, alarms began to chirp, and he reached for me in panic. Milo immediately blocked her. "Ma'am, you need to step out. You're distressing the patient." She tried to protest, but he shut the door. Inside, Ryder clung to my hand, his eyes wide and glassy tears pooling at the corners. "It's okay," I whispered. "You're safe. I'm here." When his breathing slowed enough for him to speak, he looked at me with a mix of fear and guilt that shredded me. "Dad." I saw her. His voice trembled. "I saw Grandma. In the truck." My knees went weak. "Are you sure?" He nodded, crying harder now. She followed me. I ran. The truck came fast. I tried to move. His voice broke. I didn't make it. I held him close, feeling his ribs shake under my hand. Every part of me wanted to deny it, to reject the words pouring out of him. But the pieces of the last 48 hours started clicking together like a lock turning. When Ryder drifted back into shallow sleep, I stepped into the hallway, my pulse pounding so loudly it drowned out everything else. My mother stood with her arms crossed, her expression arranged neatly like she was waiting for me to apologize for the inconvenience of being summoned. I walked straight up to her. The cameras caught your truck. The plate matches your series. Where were you that morning? For the first time, something flickered across her face, fear or guilt or simply irritation at being caught off balance. But then she straightened, sharpening her posture back into its usual sculpted confidence. Cassian, you're being ridiculous, she said, but her voice lacked its usual steel. Tell me the truth. She stepped closer, lowering her voice to a near whisper. Everything I have ever done has been to protect this family, to protect Ryder. He belongs with us, not in whatever life you're struggling to piece together up here. My chest tightened until I thought something might crack. Say it plainly, I said. Did you follow him? She didn't answer, but the silence hung between us like a confession. Through the window, I saw Ryder stirring again, calling for me in a broken voice. Behind me, Milo's expression hardened. You need to keep her away from him, he said quietly. I nodded, though my whole body shook. I turned back to look at my mother, realizing in one shattering moment that the safety of my son and the existence of the family I grew up with could no longer coexist. And standing there in that harsh hospital lighting, I understood something with absolute clarity. Nothing about this was just a family conflict anymore. It was a battle I never wanted, but now had no choice but to finish. Officer Lewis called me down to a small consultation room tucked behind the ICU. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, the kind of buzz that made the walls feel closer than they were. He slid a folder toward me and spoke gently, but nothing softened the blow. The surveillance footage from my mother's neighborhood in Scottsdale showed her truck leaving the driveway at 5:42 a.m. No detours, no stops. A straight drive north toward Flagstaff, matching the window of Ryder's accident almost to the minute. I felt something in my chest crack and then go hollow. He opened another file and showed the enhanced image from the camera near Buffalo Park. The entire license plate was visible now. It wasn't a maybe anymore. It wasn't a possibility. It was the exact plate on my mother's GMC Sierra. My breath left my body all at once, like someone had punched the air out of me. I sat frozen, staring at the proof that the person I'd been trying my whole life to please might be the same person who had put my son in the ICU. I walked back toward Ryder's room with legs that didn't feel attached to me. My mother stood outside the door, her posture impossibly straight, her face composed as if she were preparing to speak at a gala instead of facing the consequences of what she'd done. Sit down, I said. We're going to talk. She gave a thin laugh. Cassian, honestly, you're blowing this out of proportion. No one meant for anything bad to happen. Before I could answer, my phone rang. Brielle. I put her on speaker. Her voice came through frantic and shaking. Don't let Mom lie. I found a printed GPS log in her office. She tracked Ryder's route to school, to the park, everywhere. For 3 weeks. The color drained from my mother's face. She reached out to grab my arm, but I yanked away like her touch burned. I looked her straight in the eye. Why were you following my son? She didn't respond. I felt something inside me snap, the restraint I'd held my entire life finally breaking. Why? My voice came out louder than I intended. Tell me why you were following a 7-year-old boy. The silence stretched until even the hallway noise seemed to fade. Then she straightened her shoulders and spoke with icy calm, as if delivering a business decision. You are not capable of raising him. I wanted to bring him back to Scottsdale. He needs structure, discipline, the life you never managed to build. She tilted her chin in a way I'd seen all my childhood. I will not let him become another disappointment. The words hit me harder than any blow. Then my father appeared in the doorway. Douglas, quiet gray around the edges, holding a stack of papers with trembling hands. His eyes were glassy, swollen. Marjorie, he whispered, you need to tell the whole truth. She turned away from him, but he stepped closer to me, voice breaking as he spoke. Cassian, I'm sorry. It wasn't an accident. She went after Ryder. He ran from her. She tried to pull over too fast. She lost control of the truck, and it happened. I felt the world tilt sideways. My father, the man who'd spent decades trying to smooth over her cruelty, finally couldn't protect her anymore. And still my mother didn't look ashamed. She looked annoyed. I did what I had to do, she said. For this family. I stepped back from her, from both of them, like space was the only way to keep breathing. I finally found the words that had been building inside me from the moment I saw Ryder broken and bruised under hospital lights. You almost killed your own grandson, and you still think you're right. I didn't give her time to respond. I walked down the hall, found the nurse's station, and asked for Officer Lewis. When he arrived, I said the words I never imagined saying: I want to file for a formal investigation into my mother, Marjorie Holt. Then I went back into Ryder's room. He stirred as I took his hand, leaning toward me like he always had when something scared him. I whispered a vow only he and the beeping machines could hear. Nobody will ever hurt you again. Not even her. And for the first time in my life, the fear of losing my family didn't stop me. It clarified everything. A full year passed, each season marking a different step in returning to ourselves. I unlocked the door of our new rental, small, sunny, tucked near the edge of Flagstaff's ponderosa pines, and Ryder rushed inside ahead of me, his sneakers squeaking against the wood floors. I'd worked overtime for months, repairing lenses, shooting small-town weddings, editing until dawn. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest, and it was ours, built without the shadow of Holt money hanging over us. Ryder moved through the house with ease now. No casts, no walker. Just a boy who had fought his way back one day at a time. He still flinched at loud engines, but therapy was helping him untangle the fear. 3 months at a time, we sat in waiting rooms together, both of us learning how to breathe in this new world where the past didn't disappear, but didn't rule us either. The Scottsdale legal process lasted for months. In the end, my mother's license was revoked for 5 years, and she was placed under supervision with mandatory counseling. The college fund she once used as leverage was transferred fully into my control by court order. Douglas left the Holt estate. He couldn't stay in a house where denial had become a second language. He lived quietly in Phoenix, now reaching out occasionally, his relationship with me, cautious but no longer empty. Brielle and I spoke every few weeks. Without our mother's expectations pressing like a weight onto every conversation, we were beginning to rediscover who we were to each other. One late afternoon, as I adjusted the chain on Ryder's bike in the driveway, he sat beside me, pulling pine needles apart with small, careful fingers. "Dad," he said quietly, "do you know why engines scare me?" I told him I assumed it was because of the accident, because memory sometimes clings to sound. He shook his head. "It's because..." When Grandma pulled up that day, she didn't just call my name. He swallowed, voice trembling. "She told me you weren't good enough to take care of me." The words punched a hole straight through my chest. All my life I'd thought the damage she did stopped with me. But pain, as I'd learned, was something families sometimes passed down without permission. I put my hand on his shoulder and turned him toward me. "You never believe anyone else about who I am," I said softly. "Only believe what you see, what you know. You and me, we're the ones who get to define our family." For the first time, when a truck rumbled by on the street behind us, Ryder didn't tense. He glanced toward the sound, then looked back at me and nodded. A week later, we walked to an empty patch of dirt near our new home. I steadied the back of Ryder's bike as he climbed on. He pushed off slowly at first, wobbling, concentrating hard. Then he gained speed, pedaling faster, lifting his chin to the wind. "Dad, look," he shouted, turning around just long enough for me to see the light in his eyes, clear, unburdened, free. "I'm doing it." I watched him circle the lot, his laughter echoing across the open space. The boy who once couldn't face the sound of an engine was now racing toward the horizon, small and fierce, and full of the life he almost lost. For the first time since the accident, I let myself breathe deeply. Really breathe. The pine-scented air filled my lungs, crisp and cold, clearing the debris that had lived there for years. I stood still, feeling the breeze move through the tall trees beyond the lot, feeling the steady hum of a life we had built from the ruins. "I lost the family I grew up in," I said quietly, more to myself than to anyone else. "But I gained the one that matters." And for the first time in my entire life, I felt grateful for the choice I made and certain I had finally chosen right. Sometimes life breaks us open in ways we never expect, and all we can do is choose who we become in the aftermath. For me, it was choosing my son over the family I once feared losing, choosing peace over control, healing over silence. If this journey touched something in you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Maybe you're listening on a quiet night, or maybe the weather outside mirrors the heaviness or hope in your own heart. Wherever you are, drop a comment below and let me know you're here with me. And if you want to follow more real stories like this, stories about resilience, love, and fighting for what truly matters, please consider subscribing. Your presence means more than you know.